could have, but there was just too much sunshine. And even last night, getting ready for the 11 o'clock, I had kind of teeter-tottered back and forth between 89 and 90, and I just went with it because I just felt like there was not going to be enough rain to actually really help us bring a substantial cool down. And like clockwork, we hit 90 briefly before the end of the day. So that makes 16 days in a row with temperatures at or above 90 degrees. Our streak officially not broken. Now today, because it was a little bit cooler, we're still in that number 3 spot when it comes to the overall top 5 hottest Julys on record here in Charlotte. I know we've been talking a lot about kind of the distinction here. Now, 1993 by far was the hottest July on record. It was the hottest summer on record in the Queen City. We also had 33 days in a row of temperatures at or above 90. Now, I won't speculate whether or not we could break that streak, because there is a small chance we could get close to it. I don't think we'll quite get there, but again, regardless, it is hot. It is still in the top 3, and we'll at least stay in the top 3. I think if we broke one of those, it would be 1986, but very unlikely that we'll break 1993. Temperatures out there right now, 87. Dew point's still very sticky, because remember that cold front that's bringing us rain and storms and bringing us drier air tomorrow hasn't officially pushed through yet. So we're still feeling relatively humid, but again, 87 with it feels like of 94, much different than yesterday this time, where we were looking at mid-90s with the feels like of 102. A nice view there over uptown Charlotte, though. We still have a decent amount of clouds around, and I know new roof cam is amazing. Decent amount of clouds still around, and I think that's an important thing too to note. I don't know if it was my communication could have been better or lack of understanding, but I had a lot of people ask questions about whether or not we were actually supposed to be drier today. And no, remember, Tuesday was supposed to be still sticky, but with more clouds, we were going to see lower temperatures, and then the drier air arrives tomorrow. So again, hot and humid yesterday, warm and humid today, and then tomorrow, still toasty, but feeling a lot better. Now, temperature-wise, we're still going to be in the low 90s, so I want that to be an important distinction too. It's not going to be 86 with dry air. It's going to be about 92, 93 with dry air. However, that will actually feel like the number you see on the thermometer. So this graphic, for example, instead of saying 87 and 94 for feels like, we're going to look at probably 92 and feeling like 92 at the same time, right? Now, by this weekend, different story. Unfortunately, we have humidity coming soaring back, and so we'll be back in the upper 90s. I went ahead and made the call to go ahead and put that little weather alert icon on the graphics for this upcoming weekend, because realistically, even if we teeter-totter between 1 or 2 degrees, it is still going to be humid nonetheless. And I think that is the big story, with multiple days in the upper 90s by Saturday and Sunday. We do still have some rain, though, to track. Essentially, we have low pressure sitting nearby, and so we're still going to see probably some wraparound moisture here coming into the mountains later on tonight. But at least for now, we're tracking some areas of heavy rain moving through Lancaster County. You can see that just south of Lancaster, very quickly pushing out of our area. And then some outflow boundaries developing. You can see there in parts of Chester County, wider view, a few outflows here down toward Newberry, Winsboro, Whitmer. I think all of these are going to stay south of us. If you haven't seen rain, I know this probably isn't the best message, but we've kind of been feast or famine as of late, and so some areas have seen rain really heavy at times, and some, even a mile away, their friend's house is not seeing anything. And unfortunately, that's just going to be the trend over the next few days, as we really just don't have a lot of good rain chances. But I know Greensboro area, which of course we'll talk to Chief Meteorologist Tim Buckley from WFNY in a little bit, but I know they're excited to have finally some relief from all of that rain that was creating significant flooding risk. Up in the mountains, we are also tracking some areas of moderate rainfall. You can see moving in towards southern parts there of Avery County. So Plumtree, Jonas Ridge, seeing it now. That's shifting south, so Ingalls, you're going to get that within the next 30 minutes or so. A little bit further north up in Watauga County, we have additional rainfall there too. And then some light rain southern side here of Catawba County down toward Lincoln County, Cleveland County. We have some light rain, Duncan's Creek, toward Bellwood, and then eventually some heavier rain you can see on the northwestern side of Lincolnton. This cell does look like it's weakening a bit. Something we're not seeing a lot of is lightning. Futurecast is showing kind of that same wraparound I was talking about as that low moves south of us. We'll still see some moisture lingering in the mountains. And then again tomorrow, like clockwork as expected, dry, quiet, sunshine abundant. Again, the only big change is going to be the dew point is going to drop. So whereas temperatures yesterday felt like 99, or were 99 and felt like 106, tomorrow 92, feeling like about 92, 93. So Wednesday's probably not just the best day we'll see this week, but probably the best day that we'll have in the entire month of July, because it is sunny, we're not seeing rain, and of course the dew point is going to be lower as well. I did see some posts of people asking if the dew point was going to drop into the upper 50s. It's not out of the realm of possibility. We couldn't see it briefly for an hour or two, but for the most part, I think we're talking lower 60s. So again, everything is relative this time of year. If we were seeing 60s in December, that would be considered humid. But this time of year, 60s in July is a nice little treat. As I mentioned before, we're now at 16 days in a row of temperatures at or above 90 degrees. This has been that distinction we've been keeping a close eye on. So our previous streak was 17, and this streak is 16. So quick math tells you that's 33 days. Between that one day, one singular day, was 86. That was July 6th. So the day that Chantal made landfall near Myrtle Beach, because of the breezy, cloudy conditions, we only got to 86 that day. So that means in 34 days, we've had one day below that. Now, if we had stayed consistent and hit 90 that day, we actually would have broken the record for 33 days set back in the summer of 1993. Well, we didn't. But I still think that we could get in the top 5 by the end of this summer. But we're not talking about the longest 90-degree stretches ever. We're going to at least talk about the longest 90-degree stretches in the last decade. We're holding 2 of the top spots right now. 17 from earlier in June and July, now 16 currently. We are for sure going to surpass that. This will be the longest stretch on this graphic, I can tell you with the utmost certainty, by the end of this 7-day forecast. Because if we're at 16 days now and we only need 21 days to be in the top spot, I mean, look in the next week. 92 up to 99, and even the extended forecast. I don't see any upper 80s on there anytime soon.
How do I get some? Who do I need to talk to?
Brad Banovich.
Where's your manager?
Just kidding. He can't change the weather either. But certainly as we get closer, of course, to August, which I guess August 1st is on that 7-day forecast, we could see some changes. I know, Lily, you only have a few weeks left, so it's kind of crazy of that. I do want to pull up this really quick just so people can see, because I mentioned I'm referencing a ton of numbers. So I want to make sure people can see this too. So that was the longest 90-degree stretches in the last decade. This is the longest 90-degree stretch ever. So again, if we hadn't had that one day at 86, we would have technically today broken 1993's record of 33. I do think we could hit the top 5. So right now we're at 16. So if we have the next 10 days that we know are going to be plus 90, that's already going to put us at number 4 by the end of the 10-day forecast. So as we head into August, the big question will be past that 10-day forecast, will we get a little break and hit the upper 80s? Could we potentially get close to that number 3, number 2 spot? I don't know. It's possible. It's not necessarily something I want to hit, if I'm going to be honest. But it is something, of course, we'll continue to keep an eye on. So let's go back to the 7-day forecast so people can see what's going on, because, of course, here very shortly, we're going to bring in the one and only Tim Buckley. But again, heading into this weekend, those will be the next 2 days that we want folks to stay weather alert because of heat index values at or above 105. So I would expect in the Charlotte area, both Saturday and Sunday, to see heat advisories issued. This would be the 3rd time this year that we've seen multiple days in a row of heat advisories. Now we're going to leave you with the 7-day. And bring in Tim Buckley, Chief Meteorologist from WFNY. Here he is.
Hello. How's it going?
Happy Tuesday, Tim.
Happy Tuesday. Got some storms down there? We sent them your way earlier this morning, I guess.
Yeah, there's not a ton, but I will say it was nice to see you guys dry for a change. I actually mentioned this during the newscast earlier. I mentioned that y'all were dry, and I said our friends up in Greensboro are very, very happy that they are finally dry and quiet. I mean, do you know off the top of your head how many days in a row you guys had measurable rainfall? Maybe not necessarily in Greensboro, but just in the area.
I'd like to say that today broke that streak, but Unfortunately, what we did still have happen today is that people still woke up to rain. So there were still some showers earlier in the morning. Actually, though, I think I have our rain chart for the month. We had a few days last week where at least in Greensboro there wasn't rain. But basically, every day going back to July 13th has had storms in the area for our Triad area. So there's been rain more often than not this month. But there's still hit or miss factors. But even still today, we're like, finally a good chance to stay dry. And mentioned that morning shower, but probably didn't mention it enough. So the gloom factor was still there for the morning commute. But right now it's beautiful, and we're convincing ourselves that it feels better outside. It's a little better, at least.
Yeah, at least a little. Well, I just looked at our chart, and in the last 22 days, because I'm including today, we only saw measurable rainfall that was above a tenth of an inch 2 times. So...
And that's so unusual, or maybe it isn't. Maybe it isn't that unusual for summertime, though. But it just emphasizes that when it comes to summertime rain, it's so localized. And this is what we hear all the time from weather enthusiasts. They say, "Why does the storm always go away from my house? How come my neighbor gets hit all the time and I don't?" A lot of it is just random chance, and there's not a lot of reasons for you getting hit versus getting missed. But boy, it can seem that way sometimes when you're focused on a set location. Even if there's storms in the area every day, you might only get hit twice or something.
Yeah, I think one of those days had like 3.32. Our highest was 0.76 the whole month.
Wow.
Feast or
and
famine.
that's crazy. And the one that we keep harping on up here, City of Burlington, so City of Burlington's in Alamance County, the updated number for them is 16.71 for the month. So they're almost at 17 inches of rain for the month. I looked up a couple of rain gauges from local folks on our Coco Ross network. If our people watching don't know what Coco Ross is, you can get yourself a nice little rain gauge, and you can contribute to the weather conversation too. You put it in the backyard, you input that data every day, and then we get it. So get one of these things if you like. It's called COCORAHS, Coco Ross. But anyway, a couple of those stations in Alamance have 20 inches of rain for the month, which is just nuts.
Well, 1.19 here in Charlotte. James, you have a report to give us from Matthews.
I was talking to Tim last week how the rain was going around my house. I'm one of those people he just described. Why is it not raining at my house? I finally got 0.8 of an inch today for the first time in like 2 weeks. Tim, finally rained. Thank you.
Well, it never rains at James' house.
It's true.
Dry tomatoes over there. We need to keep them watered.
100%.
I actually did do a weather IQ about can storms split around your house, because I feel like that's a question that we get so much. So that was a fun one to do into the summertime.
We'll have to air that later on this week. We're talking about flooding, though, right? And the flooding has been a big conversation, right? Not just locally, but across the country. It's been more of an issue than usual for the summertime. I think we had a couple stats on this showing that there have been thousands upon thousands of flash flood warnings across the United States. And particularly, we've really been at the foreground of that here in the Mid-Atlantic, but also here in the Carolinas. I think it was about 3,000 flash flood warnings in 2025. And Brittany, I don't know if you made up this graphic or not, but the fact that it looks chaotic, I think, is the point. That these are more than we can even kind of visualize on our own.
I think it's also interesting where they are, because I would have actually thought, based on all of the storms that we've had lately, that there were actually more, like you said, in the Mid-Atlantic, like the Carolinas and North, but all of those just flood days that we had just sitting over the same spots in the Midwest, up deep South, all those areas. Of course, we know Texas. I don't need to talk about that. We already know plenty of. But I mean, Missouri down toward Tennessee. I mean, I'm almost shocked that there weren't more toward toward Charlotte, toward the Raleigh area. But that's still a good amount, even up toward New England. It's interesting to see this time of year.
Yeah, and I think if we're trying to keep it super simple, like what's the simplest explanation for this, it does seem like it's tied to the increased humidity. that we've seen over most of the eastern U.S., which was part of that stalled weather pattern. So we've had a jet stream that's not moving. We've had kind of a stagnant weather pattern. The weather hasn't changed that much. And it's been just ridiculous amounts of moisture up and down the East Coast. So not just for us, but, they had a flash flood emergency in Washington, D.C. the other day. They had the one in New York City that you saw flooding the subways. All of these things are all part of that pattern, that if you juice up the atmosphere with all the water that you can, all that tropical humidity, it only takes a sitting thunderstorm to have a big issue. And that's kind of evidenced right there on the chart. So I'm glad you made that up. It was pretty impressive to see.
Yeah. I got to give the credit to Chris Mulcahy, but also I think that's a good point, Tim. You make the point about how more moisture means heavier rain, but also we have to talk about the fact that also means that when it's warmer outside, warm water expands, so it takes up more space. So when you're talking like sea level rise, even heavy rain, that you feel like the flooding happened quicker, well, it can also mean if you're under a really, really warm pattern, that the warm water itself is just expanding because it is taking up so much more space. Because similar to what you mentioned yesterday when we were talking about the mountains and how the air is thinner, well, warmer water, the molecules are kind of bouncing a little bit crazier, so it's causing that expansion. And so that, of course, has an impact, too, on how quickly the flood waters can rise. So more moisture, heavier rain, but also the warm water takes up that additional space, too.
And it's been a really tough weather pattern. A lot of these places, a lot of these flood events that have made the headlines, they didn't have a lot of warning. You don't always have a lot of time to get prepared for something like this. All it can take is 2 to 3 hours of really heavy downpour rain in the summer, and you go from dry to having an emergency pretty quick, like they did in D.C. a couple days ago, and people were getting pulled out of cars. The biggest story in our area, and really across the state of North Carolina, I would say, was those Alamance County floods. They started with Chantal. They've continued periodically since then. It's been about 2 weeks now. So up here at WFMY, one of our reporters, Giselle Thomas, was in Saxe-Pahaw, which was one of the towns hit hard by the Haw River flooding, with an update from there.
Along the water in Saxe-Pahaw, customers are normally flowing in this time of year to the Haw River Canoe and Kayak Company.
Actually, the day before Chantal was the single highest grossing day we have on record, literally the day before. Was going to drop off.
But business slowed as heavy rains made it unsafe to get to the river, impacting canoeing and hiking, and a planned summer camp.
We were prepping for camp to start the next morning, and we came in, and not happening.
The business underwater, including gear for people to rent out and supplies for its campers.
So I actually was out here just after the very peak of the floods, and we would be underwater right where we're standing.
We're having to replace everything from scratch, a lot of which was personal items that were being used at camp as materials and supplies, and we don't have those anymore because they're gone.
Physical items might have washed away, but it wasn't a hill to climb for its employees, who worked to clear a path for Saxe-Pahaw Lake access visitors.
Knocking things out and getting things to a point where the campers can be safe here. Also getting things set up at the Boy Scout cabin so that they are able to fully use that space.
The business says the community's help is moving its mountain as it works its way back up to what feels like an incline.
Soft launch means we're not going to be doing shuttles. We're not going to be doing a lot of tubing. We still have to rebuild our tube takeout, which got totally wiped out by the flood.
To hopefully reach another peak by fall or next year.
And we've talked with so many businesses in the county facing similar problems, including a Scoop of Sugar cake studio who says it lost everything in the floods. All of them say the best way to help is through continuing to support small businesses throughout Alamance County.
And so there are a lot of different problems when it comes to those floodings from the tropical storm and also from these individual thunderstorms. You had the flash floodings first, which brings the issue to the roadways, and that's when you get in trouble with people driving through the water or getting stuck in their cars. But then you have the streams that go into the main stem rivers, and in our area, in that county, Alamance County, the Haw River, that's the big mighty one that everything kind of falls into. And so that's where that camp was located. That's where those impacts are. And what you had in the day and the day and a half that followed is that river kind of rose up to levels as high as it was during Hurricane Fran, which is the record for that area. And so that's the slow, steady creep of water that you can't do anything about. And that's when you have people, storage facilities got messed up, schools got flooded. This camp has been impacted as well. And in the summertime, what do we have? We have hot water. People want to, go to the water, cool off a little bit. The Haw River is one of those places that is a natural place to congregate and go out and enjoy things. So there is some impact from that, and I think it's going to be a pretty big cleanup still, even a couple weeks out now, but that's going to linger a little while longer.
Yeah, and you hate to see it happen to local businesses too, just because that's like such an important part of our local economy and things like that. Tim, you can't talk. You also brought up a good point too about the fact that the flash flooding can wash the rivers or the waterways away. It can cause issues for drivers. We talk a lot about heat buckling during the summer, but I feel like in the Carolinas, one of our big issues is the flash flooding and people driving around barricades or just through flooded roads, and they don't know what is beneath them. Because we tell people all the time, like not the jokey way, but about how you see the fire ants flooding and or floating on the top, and you're like, don't walk through the waterways. But when you're driving, it's not just the fact that you can get stuck and someone might have to come rescue you, but the actual road or bridge can be completely washed away, and that's why a lot of the deaths that happen from flash floods are people in their car.
The road might not be there, and you might not realize it. And in some cases, some of those roads washed out the day after because they opened up with a sinkhole or something. So these are issues that everything, it kind of all is tied together. In fact, we have another story here that our Hannah Hill did. This is also in Alamance County, but there are a lot of roads that are broken and still broken, and some of them are private roads too that people are going to have to foot the bill for. Take a look at this story also from the Alamance County area.
It's been 2 weeks since Tropical Storm Chantal, and neighbors are still having to park beyond this break in the road and hike back home. It's a big inconvenience, and neighbors aren't sure if they'll be able to afford a fix. The Drury family hikes a few hundred feet just to get from their house to their car. Tropical Storm Chantal left them trapped inside their home for more than 24 hours. Now the road leading to their house is partially washed out, the culvert broken, and they still live in fear of the next round of rain.
I've spent 6 nights away since then in a hotel. Because of all the flash flooding, I'm too scared that I'm going to get trapped. And, like the dirt that's there, I'm scared it's going to get washed out.
Cotton Road is private, which means the state won't repair it. Drury got quotes to fix the damage between $34,000 and $84,000. It's not just hard on her. She says elderly neighbors also struggle to safely walk up and down the makeshift dirt path.
Private road maintenance is private road maintenance, but this is a natural disaster. And it's a lot of money that people just don't have. $34,000, and I can't force anybody to do anything. So it's really kind of all on me.
After Hurricane Helene, Governor Josh Stein signed an executive order to repair private roads and bridges. We're not sure if he'll do that in Alamance County, but assessments are underway. For now, live in Snow Camp, I'm Hannah Hill, WFMY News 2.
And that's something that most of us probably would never think about. Think about if your roadway that you live on, that you use to get out of your house, was damaged, and then you have to fix it. So this is something that people are dealing with in a number of ways in that area. And James was just saying to me during the story, this was something that we saw so often with Helene in the mountains. Is a lot of those people have to foot the bill themselves.
Yeah, not ideal. Not an ideal situation at all. And when we have these horrible weather events, so think the flooding that you guys had from Chantal, Helene, and of course what happened in Texas, some of the most important people, if not the most important people sometimes, are the first responders, right? The people that are boots on the ground trying to help, trying to find survivors, and they can be really, really, really negatively impacted by these big stories. And while we know mental health is so important too, especially when it comes to weather and hurricane weather anxiety, we do have an updated story on kind of how those first responders are dealing with what happened in Texas there that 4th of July weekend.
Kelly Harris is a licensed professional counselor with Warriors Heart, an addiction and PTSD treatment center for veterans, active military, and first responders. Like Harris, many of them were on the front lines volunteering for search and recovery efforts. She says many of the things that they see may stick with them for the rest of their lives.
It's natural to sit back with your teammates and say, hey, what are you seeing? Hey, I just re-experienced something from that smell or that sight, or I'm hearing something and it cued me back in again.
Licensed professional counselor Kelly Harris says those sights, scents, and scenery can weigh heavily on the hearts of first responders after some time.
You can see the day after day. They're there, they're ready to do it, but they just want to focus on it and they're not concentrating on anything else. It's heavy. They're finding and recovering things every day, depending on where they're at.
She says with thousands of volunteers assisting with search efforts and their mission in mind, they feel a higher sense of purpose. But she advises to not be afraid to reach out for help.
Warriors Heart are last responders for the first responders. We can help you clinically and in other ways to be able to regulate your body again and get back to a healing. So the last response is to heal our first responders.
Warriors Heart, based out of Bandera, has outpatient programs available.
And Warriors Heart is in the backyard. We're right there, and we're here to help them when they're ready and when they need it.
The search continues until every person has been recovered.
And there's somebody that will always pick up the phone. Just like first responders, Warriors Heart doesn't sleep either.
The number to the nonprofit's 24-hour hotline is 866-955-4035. Your call will be answered by former first responders and veterans. Reporting from Kerrville, I'm Simone Simpson. Back to you.
And your heart just breaks for them, because your heart breaks so much for the family and friends of those who passed away in those Texas floods, but also for the first responders, true heroes trying to do the work of not only trying to search and rescue people who might have still been alive, but also just in general. So I definitely would encourage people to take advantage, if they need to, of those mental health resources. So.
Yeah, just such important work they're doing, but really heavy and long, just long days and a lot of help that needs to be done. So we're appreciative for them, for sure.
Yeah, and very thankful that we're at least getting a break here in the Carolinas from the flooding over the next few days. Much drier tomorrow, and Tim, you're going to be back with Brad, but I'm sure I'll see you in the next few weeks.